Hello, and welcome to our section that is going to be covering chapters 3 through 10 very quickly. This is going to be a very fast-paced video because I could make like a 3-hour long video on this stuff and probably still leave stuff out I would want to include, but of course when teaching a course that's just one semester, a lot of times you can't go over every little concept with a fine tip comb. So obviously we have to kind of condense the core stuff that we want you to focus on. I have the Smart Book from Connect pulled up here, and that's going to help guide today's lecture. So what we're going to do is just basically really focus on the stuff I'm going to quiz you on, the stuff that I really think it's important to know as a music appreciation student. Things that are going to help you understand music better and help you listen to it better. Now, first of all, in regards to rhythm, there is a very excellent video done by Howard Goodall from the BBC, and I am posting a link to this video on Blackboard. And for some reason, if you can't find it, if you just search for this right here, how music works in rhythm, it should be there's actually, I think, a few people that have posted it. I cannot suggest watching this video enough. It really does an excellent job of illustrating many of the concepts that are found in here. But just to go over it in case you don't have the 50 minutes or so to watch that entire video. Basically, beat and rhythm are terms that you see here that people confuse all the time. I hear people say, man, that song's got a nice beat, when in fact it's actually the rhythm of the song that they find attractive. Beats, as you can see, represented by these lines, they move through time. That's what music does. Music is a unique art form, and like cinema, it moves through time. It's not something that you get to decide how much time you're going to devote to it necessarily. If you want to listen to Mozart's 25th Symphony, you have to spend as much time listening to it as I do of the same performance. It's not like a painting where you can go by a painting and just give it a glancing view, or you can sit there for 3 hours and study it. Music moves through time, and so we have to have a way of measuring that time. And the way we do that is with beats. Now, we usually, in the Western world, we usually break up beats per minute, but we didn't really have ways of measuring that until we had mechanical devices called metronomes that could accurately break down those beats per minute. Before, beats were mainly determined by the note's relationship to other notes, and so therefore there was a lot of interpretation involved in early music notation. But you have beats at regular recurring intervals, just like your heartbeat, and they give a similar illustration in the How Music Works video. But basically, beats are different from rhythms. Rhythms are anchored in the beats, but beats are the pulse in music. So when you're listening to a song, it's the thing that you're usually tapping your toe to, or the thing that you're kind of bobbing your head to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull up a song here, and then we're going to illustrate how beats work and stuff like that. I'm going to make sure that you can hear the beat within a piece of music. So when you're listening to a piece of music, and you can pull up this same song if you want to, or really any song, and tried to locate the beat. Some students get this right away. Some students, they have to really practice and work at it. The reason I picked this song is that there's actually, I believe, 4 like bass pulses right at the beginning of the song, and that's the beats. That's how they're organized in the song. So see if you can't hear the boom, 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 and then the song starts, and just keep tapping to those 4 beats that you hear in the beginning. Often, like a drummer will often do, go 1, 2, ready, go, like that. See, just keep clapping your hand to it, and then we're going to see if you can keep with it. I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Alright, so hopefully you've picked up on the fact that the beat is there. Now, some students on this song, some students they hit beats 2 and 4. They go like tung ta tung ta tung ta, because that's the way rock and roll beats or most pop music beats are laid out. But in this song, the beat actually comes. Remember, beats come at regular intervals like that. And anytime you feel like kind of a surge effect in the music and its flow, that's kind of like a beat. And the rhythm is based on that. You can see the song "My Country 'Tis of Thee" right here. Let me zoom in on it so we can see it a little better. This part right here. So you've got the beat going like this. My country 'tis of thee. Now, did you notice that? Did you notice that you didn't sing "of" until after the beat? And if you didn't, it would go, my country 'tis of thee. Notice that "of" comes in between the two beats there. And so that's the difference. This is the rhythm here, which goes tick, 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 like that. That's the actual rhythm of the song, and you can see how it's based on the beat and how you can feel the beat, but it's not the beat itself. So rhythm, we can say it's the particular arrangement of note lengths in a piece of music. So basically the rhythm is the exact presentation of notes. It's based on the beat. If you don't play it based on the beat, then it doesn't work. Now, meter refers to how beats are organized, and some beats get a stronger surge than the other ones. So, for instance, in the "My Country 'Tis of Thee" example, it's not like equal beats. It's not a completely democratic laying of it. On the words "my" and "tis," you'll notice that the beats get a little bit stronger. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. And this comes from poetry and anything that's arranged by beats. There's always a stronger beat that leads the others and gives us a clue as how these beats are arranged. Now, in this case, it is a triple meter, and you can see that by 1 2 3 1 2 3. Now, there are different kinds of meter. There are meters that are called duple, quadruple. Those are going to be the main ones that we're going to focus on. As you can see, there's even ones that are, like sextuple and stuff like that. We're not really going to deal with those. The main ones that you will find in most music is duple, which is groups of two, like Mary Had a Little Lamb. Mary had a... Well, I did that wrong, sorry. Mary had a little lamb. Little lamb, and you can see that beat 1 there gets the emphasis. We already saw our example of triple meter here. Quadruple is every 4 beats. So, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Now, you will notice in quadruple meter that 3 does kind of get a little bit of an extra emphasis than 2 and 4, and this can lead it to be very confusing in figuring out if some songs are in quadruple meter or duple, because every other beat gets a little bit of an emphasis. We'll talk about later in the class, if it should come up a few times, how to tell the two apart. And honestly, if you say it's duple and it's actually triple, I can understand that if you're ever given an exercise to do that. I'm not sure I'm going to hark on that very much at all. So if you confuse duple with quadruple, that's fine, because I have 2 degrees in music and I sometimes can't tell. But there are other things you can listen for, but we're not going to get that in depth. Now, it is true that you do have irregular meters. Sometimes songs have very unusual groupings of meters. As a matter of fact, there is a modern group called Gorillaz, and they actually have a song called 5/4. And if you listen to this song, you can actually hear how the beats are arranged, not 1 2 or 1 2 3 or 1 2 3 4, but they actually do them in groups of 5, and it gives it a very interesting kind of rhythmic flow to it. It sounds a little different, and your ears should be able to tell that this song is a little off sounding, because we are hardly ever exposed to measures that have 5 beats in them. And by the way, that's the next term we're going to get to, which is measure, which is how these beats are organized. For instance, in duple meter, you have a new measure every 2 beats. So the first measure is 1 2, and then you draw a measure or bar line. That's why people like in jazz call them bars. And then you have 1 2, and so every measure has equal numbers of beats in it usually. We're going to listen to the song, and we're going to see if you can hear where the unusual grouping of beats are. Remember, you're listening for 5 beats and then 5 more. So 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5. See if you can hear that in this song. Alright, did you hear it? If not, let's back it up. And the way that it's organized, they actually break the 5 into a group of 2 into a group of 3, which is the way those meters are usually played. But see if you can hear it this time. Did you hear that? They went 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3, and they maintain that beat throughout most of the song. So that is an unusual meter. Not one that you're going to encounter a lot. But like we said, measures are when you've have a complete group of beats. You have, in the case of My Country 'Tis of Thee, which is in triple meter, 1 2 3, and then you have a new measure. And this of course is not the way we write music. We're going to see that in future examples. But that's how that works. Now, as far as accent and syncopation, an accent is simply where you give emphasis to a particular part of the rhythm. So, for instance, if you want to give the my here in this song, Give My Regards to Broadway, you don't just say give my regards to Broadway. If you want to give that my a little extra oomph, you say give my regards to Broadway. And notice it gives the rhythm, it keeps the rhythm interesting, because the one thing that will kill interest in music is a little too much repetition. Now, there are styles of music like trance and stuff like that that completely thrive on continuous repetition, but in most music we like to be surprised. We like to have our expectations played around with. So, for instance, if you're a musician and you're playing a rhythm and you're going da ba dum bum 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 ba dum bum 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 ba dum bum 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 ba da bum bum bum. Notice how that ba da bum bum bum. Your expectations were set up. You thought I was going to play the same thing, but instead I changed it up, and it added a little bit more interest into the piece. Now, syncopation is a special type of accent where you stress the rhythm right before or right after a beat. So instead of playing like Mary Had a Little Lamb straight on the beat, like Mary had a little lamb, like that, instead you might go Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb, like that. So you're kind of delaying or playing the note right before the beat. So either right before or right after, and that's the way like jazz and rock and roll and stuff like that. That's why their rhythms sound quite invigorating. Now, don't make the mistake that classical music doesn't have syncopation, or that they don't have unexpected rhythms. I think too many people think that Mozart and Beethoven never did syncopation, and that's simply not true. They have actually some complex syncopations going on in some of their pieces. Now, tempo is basically the Italian word for time. It's the rate at which music flows through time. And you can play music fast or you can play it slow. And depending on how you play it has a huge impact on the emotional reaction that you have. And these are general Italian terms here. You don't necessarily have to memorize these. But I would have these handy for when you do get to like listening guides in your textbook. And they use these words. For instance, if you look at some of the actual listening pieces that are included in your textbook. Let's get to one up here. Let's see. Like for instance, in this piece right here. Well, this one, I don't know if this one has one. But these are what the listen outlines look like, and these are still in part one, so they're staying fairly simple. But later ones they will have up here, like it does tell you what meter they're in a lot of times, so you can follow along with the beat. But it also may say up here, like andante or something like that. So be on the lookout for those. And like I said, I'm not going to test you. I'm not going to, on your next quiz, I'm not really going to require that you have these per se memorized, but I definitely want you to know what tempo is, and I want you to be at least somewhat familiar with these. Some of these really kind of sound like they should be, what they should be. And we've heard terms before like presto, you might hear a magician say that. That's because they have to move fast to fool your eye. Grave is the one that students usually mispronounce. They usually say grave. But let me go down them so you know how they're pronounced. There's largo, grave, adagio, andante, moderato, allegretto, allegro, vivace, presto, and prestissimo, which means to play it as fast as humanly possible. Alright, so I'm going to say them again, see if you can say them with me this time. Largo, grave, adagio, andante, moderato, allegretto, allegro, vivace, presto, prestissimo. And once again, we use Italian terms. We tend to favor those. You will see pieces of music that use German or English, and sometimes it helps to have a dictionary of European languages on hand. But the reason this is because just like with the dynamic markings, like forte and piano, there's a big reason why we use a lot of Italian in music notation, and we'll get to that when we get to part 2 of the textbook. All right, so there is a note here talking about how sometimes when we talk about tempo markings, they don't just say the tempo, the speed, but sometimes they can have other things like in a Beethoven piece it may say allegro con brio, which means allegro, fast, con, with, brio, spirit. So a lot of times in the tempo marking they'll give extra indicators of the nature of the piece. So allegro con brio means fast with spirit. All right, now chapter 4, I do want you to read over it, but please don't break your neck trying to memorize, how music is notated. Just get the general idea down that this is a staff, and that as the notes go up and down on the staff, they go up and down in pitch. So we measure pitch on a vertical basis, and we measure rhythm on a horizontal basis. And there are indicators in the music that indicate what meter it is, what rhythm it is, what pitch it is. It took a while for Western music to get this specific. Some of the earliest examples of written music that we're going to see in part 2 don't indicate things like meter or rhythm. They basically just preserve the pitch. So it's a bit problematic when you listen to the performances of that music because it leaves a lot up for interpretation. But modern day music, we can actually notate music really specific. I can pick up a piece of sheet music and pretty much figure out how the composer intended it to be played throughout the various aspects. Like these two numbers here after the clef, and we'll talk about clefs. This is the meter. In this case, it's called 6/8. You always say the top number first and the bottom. I do not want you to know what those numbers mean. You don't have to worry about them. If you're like a music major or planning to minor in music, don't worry, you'll have classes that explain them. And another thing, if you do find that this class is lacking a little bit and you wish I could have gone a little more deeper into things like what do those numbers mean, there is a fantastic website that actually has apps that you can download too, and it's musictheory.net. And you can go in here and you can start with the basics of the basics, like what a staff is, and then you click this arrow down here and it just takes you through the steps. You can back up if you feel like you got left in the dirt, and you can just go through step by step. I think I meant to say left in the dust there. But here you can go through and you can see what all these different things mean. As a matter of fact, if I don't forget, I will make sure to put a link to this website so you can more easily access it. And some of these lessons on here go right into stuff we're talking about. So you can go through this, and there's even exercises you can do to test your knowledge. Like, for instance, if you want to go in here and see if you really can figure out what notes these are. Now, I know that that's a C, and it actually plays you the note too. So, and I know that that's an F flat. So there's some really cool exercises to test your knowledge on the various things the site teaches you. And like I said, I believe the site, I've never done it myself, but if I'm not mistaken, the front landing page here, there's some suggested apps, I believe they are, and I may have to check those out once I get a tablet. They look like they might be better for tablets. I'm not even sure if it's for Android or iOS, but I'm sure it's for both. So check it out. I'll be sure to try to post a link to that. Alright, so the main thing about this chapter is I want you to understand the concept that music is written on the staff. And by the way, if there's more than one staff, it's pronounced staves. Don't say staffs. The staves is the plural, and that's spelled S-T-A-V-E-S. Not really going to be on the quiz or nothing, but it's just good to know. It's always good to say things properly. Alright, so this is the big thing I want you to know from it is what a rest, because students usually get this wrong. If I ask most students what a rest is, they say it's a pause in music. And that is not true. Do not say it's a pause. The beat keeps going. A pause would imply that the beat stops temporarily and then resumes, and that's not what rest are. Notice that we say duration of, and this is the big S word, silence. Rest indicates silence, and these different kinds of rest indicate different periods of silence. Depending on the meter and stuff like that, they're interpreted for different amounts. So let's say I have a piece of music, and on beat 2 of every measure, I want there to be complete silence. I don't want anybody to play on beat 2, but I want everybody to play on beat 1, 3, and 4. So the way I would notate is I would put a note on beat 1, I would put a rest on beat 2, and then I would put notes on 3 and 4, and so it would sound like this: bum, 2, bum, 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 2, bum, bum. And so every beat 2 would be silent. And notice that the beat keeps going: bum, 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 bum. So the beat just, keeps going. There is a thing in music that we can notate an actual pause, but that's called a fermata, and that's getting deeper than we'll ever go in the class. Okay, so notating meter, like we said there, if you see these two numbers, you don't need to know how to interpret what they mean. Sometimes, by the way, you'll see a C or a C with a slash through it. So those are abbreviations for the two most common times that we had. This is a C stands for the common time, I believe, in this, because 4/4 is almost always a meter that you find in pop music, and it also is quite common in classical too. All right, so don't memorize things like this. I don't really care if you know that kind of stuff. Just get down the general idea that we notate music on the staff. We indicate the rhythm on a horizontal axis and the pitch on a vertical axis, and that's how that works. And the staff has 5 lines and 4 spaces, and if you have notes above that or notes below that, then you write these little lines called ledger lines that go outside that, and that's basically how music works on the written level. And it's huge concept to know that when they started writing down music, that really allowed music to take off, because when you write music down, not only can you share that music and preserve it for future generations, and they can study it and learn from you. Before we had written music, people couldn't do that. They had to pass down music in person, and that greatly limited the influence that one composer could have on another, and it greatly limited the amount of development that we could do through music. So once they started writing this stuff down, we're really going to see it just really take off. And I think that you'll find that the countries that never developed music notation, or the continents, cultures, whatever you want to say, the ones that never actually developed a written system of music notation, their music kind of hits an apex. It kind of seems to be frozen in time. And you can see this with written languages too. You may remember a movie called Stargate, where these military people find this Stargate and they go to like this alternate dimension or something like that, and they find an enslaved people, and it was required by law that these enslaved people could not write. They could speak to each other, but they could not write. That was forbidden. And here in America, in many places, we also had the same policy for slaves. Slaves could not learn. It was against the law for them to read or write, because that really causes your society to be able to build on things. I mean, why do you think we give you textbooks in college and stuff? Because even after the author of this textbook, which I believe he's still alive right now, but even after he passes, he can still, his knowledge will still be out there and available to you. All right, so for the rest of the series, I just wanted to make this video just long enough that you could kind of see what I'm looking for. I'm going to be posting a few other videos, especially from the How Music Works series, that you can check out, that will help explain concepts like melody and harmony and key and stuff like that. Now, when it gets to Chapter 10, it's basically, the only thing you need to understand with Chapter 10 is everything you've learned up to that point, all the different kinds of instruments we went over last week, and it took almost 2 weeks to go over all those. All the different things like melody, harmony, and texture and stuff like that you've learned. The reason we put emphasis on these historical periods, and if I were you, I would go ahead and memorize these historical dates, because you're going to have to at a future time if you don't do it now. And I do reserve the right to put this on your next quiz. So these historical periods are stylistically different. It's not so much a technological thing or an education thing. It's mainly how they treat the various elements of music. And so we are going to start in Western Europe during the Middle Ages, and when we get there, I will completely explain why we start there. I will explain why we don't start in Sub-Saharan Africa 200 years ago. There's a specific reason we have for starting at that time and at that place. Now, we will branch out from there. I'm sorry, I think my dog is barking in the background. We will branch out from there and kind of expand our horizons from there. But this is just a general overview of kind of what I'm looking for. If I were to go through all the rest of these chapters, this video would be a little bit longer than I would intend, and you've got other work that you need to be working on. So check out some of the How Music Works videos, and that I will link on Blackboard, and see if those don't help illustrate some of these. And of course, if you are struggling with something, like you still can't really figure out what texture is all about, feel free to contact me. I will be more than happy to get in touch with you some way, and even if it's via Skype call or something like that, and explain it to you. Okay? So good luck learning all this wonderful stuff and seeing how it all works together to make pieces of music.